an educational service by Alcorn Immigration Law, and the information discussed is for overview only. This should not be construed as legal advice or advice to take any specific action on, and please feel free to submit questions anonymously through the Zoom function below. And with that, it is now my pleasure to introduce to you our CEO and founder, Sophie Alcorn, and our expert immigration attorney, Nadia Zaidi.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Alex. Hi, Nadia, and welcome to all of our attendees today. We have a lot of people here, and so Nadia and I are excited, as always, to share the latest updates and our expertise, and it is vast at this point, so we're delighted to share all the details. We know that this webinar is particularly interesting for people as we reach out to the startup community of founders and early stage technology employees with everything that happened in banking over the last weekend. So this is the place to be to learn about immigration, independence, and security. We're here to talk about, is the EB-1A right for me? And we'll touch a little bit on the O1 and the EB-2NIW because those often come up in these conversations as well. And yeah, you're welcome to, as Alex mentioned, put your questions in the Q&A panel. There may be a way to mark your name as anonymous if you want to. If your name shows up, people can be able to see your questions. So please don't ask us anything that's confidential. And of course, we are available for consultations, and we have a very special program called Legal Launch where we'll help you figure out if you have enough evidence to qualify for an EB-1A. So we'll provide all of those details as well. Nadia, how are you today?
I'm doing great. I'm excited to do this with you again. It's always fun chatting with you about this stuff, and I see so many familiar names in the list of attendees, so that's
really wonderful. Yeah, and I'm excited that we can offer this. Even now, we're in the midst of H-1B season, so utilizes a lot of our firm's resources. But thank you very much for making the time to be here and share your knowledge with everybody today, Nadia.
Of course.
All right, so hi everybody. If you're new to our firm, Alcorn Immigration Law, and just getting to know us, my name is Sophie. I'm the founder. I write for TechCrunch, a column called Dear Sophie. I'm a board certified specialist in immigration and nationality law by the State Bar of California Board of Legal Specialization. I'm legally required to say that whole thing. And I am joined today by my amazing expert colleague, Forbes rated top startup attorney in the US for immigration, Nadia Zaidi, an incredible lawyer and proud first-generation American who supports all of our clients through their EB-1A green cards and self-petitions and EB-2NIWs and O1s.
Right. Thank you, Sophie.
You're welcome. You're welcome. And our mission together at Alcorn Immigration Law, along with our colleagues, there are about, we've got about 15 people involved in the operations, 15 to 20 people involved in the operations of our firm right now. We help hundreds of startups and thousands of individuals from every country in the world. Whether you're currently inside the United States or outside of the United States, whether you're a student or working for a tech company or a company on H-1B, or if you aspire to be a startup founder or just simply have more peace of mind than what your company is able to offer, we're so excited to support you. The mission of our firm is to overcome borders, expand opportunity, and really connect the world by practicing compassionate, visionary, and rigorous immigration law in service of the betterment of humanity. So we love supporting the US to recruit top global talent, you guys, to be able to build whatever you envision in the United States. And we know all the tremendous benefits that has for not only US taxes and job market and economy, but really for the technological advancement and peace and climate of the world. So it's an honor to work with our clients. Our network is vast. We utilize it to support our clients. We have a lot of connections with reporters. We can help I can help founders get articles published in TechCrunch if that's something that you want to do, as a result of today's webinar. We're involved in a number of organizations. We work with alumni of top accelerators and that are in the portfolios of really amazing VCs. And so we love utilizing this network to help you. So please, if you ever need a referral to a service provider or somebody in the innovation economy, please reach out. We are resources. And okay, so Nadia, who do we want to help with today's webinar?
The better question is, who do we not want to help? Because we want to help a lot of people. We can really, this webinar is relevant for you if you work in the tech industry, if you're a founder, if you are currently an international student who's looking to be a founder to work in the tech industry, and even families that are looking to move to the US or are here in the US as maybe you're here as a dependent, and you want to figure out how you can do your own thing. So
yeah, and not to leave anybody out, these are some of the most common types of profiles of people who we tend to help. But you know, Nadia helps artists and performers, and we've helped people in completely different sectors. So this is all encompassing. A lot of our examples are going to be geared towards these audiences, but one of the really cool things about the EB-1 is we can tailor it to any sort of professional background and experience. So, you know, somebody last night was like, I do information security, like there's some sort of white hat hacker, but like, yeah, we can help you too. So where there's a will, there's a way. So just to go into this a little bit more in depth, we've had a lot of news over the last 6 months, dare I say, about the layoffs in the tech sector. The whole SVB, all this banking stuff definitely struck a chord. Everybody was freaking out last weekend of like, oh my God, what if people can't access their funds? So fortunately, you know, the FDIC is backing everything and startups have their cash and they can make payroll. But you never know, it's volatile, and it's really nice to be able to get out of an employer-dependent immigration sponsorship position to be able to self-petition. So, you know, some of the stuff we'll talk about throughout the webinar is how your past accomplishments tie into your eligibility, whether you may have an advanced degree or not. It's okay. If you're from India or China, there's special considerations. We can certainly help you navigate this. The EB-1A is especially great for people from those countries, right, Nadia, because of the backlogs?
Right. So the EB-1A priority dates, well, they used to be current for everybody, but right now there's a little bit of a wait time, but it's still significantly shorter than in the other.
Yeah. So this is where you hear about like India, the Cato Institute, 2017, Indian professionals with EB-2 who have, for example, PhDs may have to wait 150 years for their turn in line for a green card. So nobody's updated those studies since then. They're out of date, but the point is it can take decades potentially in some of these other categories, and people need their freedom. So we can also help, you know, maybe you're from India or China, or you're not, whatever, but you're here as an international student, you're looking at graduating soon, you're not sure, like apparently some management consulting companies aren't necessarily going to do immigration sponsorship. So how do you stay and live and work if they're not going to put you in the H-1B lottery? So, you know, it really depends on people's travel needs internationally and the details of your current program. We're going to be hedging a lot because a lot of this is person specific. But in the past, Nadia, we've helped even people before they graduate on their F1, before they start OPT, you know, start the green card process, right?
We have, and it, you know, people have history from before they came here and started on their F1. So we look at the full picture of what the person has accomplished and see what we can do for them.
And certainly schools cannot advise their current students to be pursuing green cards because the F1 is for non-immigrant intent, and you should certainly have non-immigrant intent whenever you come here as an international student. But if you've been here for some time and you're reevaluating your plans, it is possible to change your mind and to look to stay longer term.
Absolutely.
Aspiring founders. Nadia, why might an aspiring founder be interested in an EB-1A?
Well, because it allows you to self-sponsor. So as Sophie mentioned, getting out of that whole employer-employee relationship and being dependent on an employer is really valuable. And if you want to start your own company and be a founder, then the EB-1A does allow you to sponsor yourself. So you don't need to depend on anyone to do that for you.
Yeah. And it can be great if you already have an early stage startup and you can't do a perm anymore. Like, let's say you own 50% of the company. There's no way your perm will ever get approved, right? They're going to audit you and it's going to get rejected. So having like this self-sponsorship option can be great. It can be great if you're like, oh my God, I don't know if my startup's going to be around for 3 more years. So it can also be nice to get that independence from even if it's your specific company. And also, we help a lot of like FANG employees from big tech companies, right, who are on H-1B. They're waiting a really long time. Their dream is to be a CEO of a startup, and they might not necessarily want to do an H-1B transfer to start it.
Right. And in some cases, they've done the H-1B transfer and they're like, you know what, now I'm ready to go for the green card and not have to deal with the perm and all that. Yeah.
And there's a particular thing about H-1B transfers for founders where it's currently harder for you to get an H-1B at your startup as a CEO rather than a CTO because of the H-1B regulations about an employer-employee relationship. We have done it. It's a bit trickier, but there is some hope this year on the horizon that USCIS will change the regulations for founders and make it easier to get the H-1B as a CEO. But since we don't have that yet, if you can file the EB-1A and then the I-485, you're going to get a work permit, and the work permit allows you to have additional streams of income, like in addition to your H-1B. So, and then families, kids age out when they're 21. Spouses of O1 visa holders for extraordinary ability cannot legally work as an O3 dependent. So can be a great way for families to have security, especially if your kids are getting closer to, college years and you want that in-state tuition for their degrees here. Also, sometimes aspiring founders who are currently overseas want to get green cards for their whole family before displacing, their kids from their current schools. So that can be another strategy as well. All right, so I'll say a few words to put this into the immigration context, and then we're going to dive into the really core requirements of the EB-1A green card and what it requires. And we're going to look at answering your questions throughout. I do see that some of them are already popping up in the Q&A panel, so that's fabulous. So just to give this a little bit of context before we dive into the nitty-gritty, and then just to reassure you, if you need a personal analysis of how much you've already accomplished and is it sufficient, or where are the holes and what do you need to keep working on, like you've gotten some of the stuff done but not all of it maybe, or maybe yes and you don't know, we do have a specific service offering for that at Alcorn. It's called Legal Launch, and we'll be sharing more details, and if you just ever want to contact us and request Legal Launch, we will evaluate all of your past accomplishments. Okay. So I mentioned this before, a lot of you in the US are here on visas. You want a green card, that's the EB-1, or it's like an EB-2 with perm from your company, or it's 90-day fiance and marrying a US citizen. But today we're going to focus on doing it by yourself based on your past accomplishments. And then one day, if you ever want to become a US citizen, you need to have a green card first for 5 years, typically, unless you're married to a US citizen. The second line shows that if you ever have to go back home to take care of a family member, or midstream in a green card process, or you've never moved to the US, you can still get a green card from another country. There is no requirement to have a visa prior to getting a green card. So keep that in mind too. Some people who have never been to the United States before could simply get an EB-1A as their first time visiting, potentially. Okay. And then a lot of you are in or have experienced the student immigration journey. So just a brief word here, we've helped people as F1 students get EB-1s. You have limited ways to work legally as an international student, and you have to specifically get work authorization. Those are programs like CPT before you graduate, pre-completion OPT, post-completion OPT, STEM OPT. So my TechCrunch article last week was specifically, and maybe Alex could put this in the chat window for us if it's on our website yet, but it was specifically about ways to rack up EB-1 or O1 accomplishments without, well, in ways that do not get defined as work, so that you can legally do those activities. So we've definitely helped people at every stage of this kind of like student to corporate immigration journey sort of peel off of the main track. As one of my founder friends said, I already fell off the assembly line. So this is EB-1 is a great option for all of you who may be looking for an off the assembly line path. Okay. And then we had a question in the chat window about some of the differences between some of these statuses. It's particularly the EB-1A and the EB-2 NIW. And we'll say a few more words about the EB-2 NIW at the beginning, but this is one of 3 buckets of US green cards. Green cards are permanent residence, it's a lifetime status. You get the card that you renew every 10 years, but like once you're in, America is your home, and then you always pay taxes here. And if you want to upgrade to citizenship later, you can, to vote and to be able to leave for long periods of time and things like that. So family-based green cards, 90-day fiance, that's another thing, not for today's webinar. The green card lottery, where people from countries with low levels of immigration, that's not today's webinar. Here we're focusing on these employment-based EB green card categories. There's a lot. Companies will typically sponsor employees in the EB-2 and EB-3 categories, which typically involve a perm process with the Department of Labor. It's a 3-step process. Today, for this webinar, because you all are mostly people, not companies, who want green cards for yourself, EB-1A is the fastest way for people from India and China to get green cards by themselves without a company. If you're from any other country and you want a green card by yourself without a company sponsoring you, we'll say a few more words on this at the end, but we would recommend probably the EB-2 NIW because it's actually a lot easier to get. There's a double standard. Sorry, if you're from India or China, it's harder, but it's still manageable. So that's the difference. So keep that in mind as we go through, and certainly make a note, even if you're not from India or China, make a note of how you compare to the EB-1A criteria that we're talking about, because it could be helpful for another visa if you want to get here sooner than 2 to 3 years, called the O1, or we can even use some of those categories for an EB-2 NIW. Okay. And yeah, so EB-1A and EB-2 NIW. Basically, the EB-1A is for people who have at least 3 out of 10 categories, and we're going to talk about what those categories are in a minute. You can be in a field related to science, the arts, education, athletics, also business. And the EB-2 NIW, you either have to have a master's degree or merely be exceptional, not extraordinary. So that's easier. And then it's really about a future showing that what you plan to do once you have a green card is going to be good for America in some way. There's also, if you work for a company, an EB-1B for researchers, or there's like an L1, there's other types of green cards we're not going to focus on today. Nadia, could you chat a little bit here about like, what is this crazy chart and why do we care?
Yes, sure. So the way I describe it is it's a virtual line. You're standing in a virtual line, and you can see here it's it's split up. If you look at the first column, employment base, so what Sophie is referring to first, EB-1A, second, EB-2, NIW. So those are, I mean, there's other stuff on here, but for the purpose of this conversation, the first and second, first is EB-1A, second is EB-2. There's NIW, and then there's other types of EB-2s also, but they all fall in that employment-based bucket. And then you have countries. So depending on which country you were born in, you are going to get in line. So if you're born in India or China and you're applying for an EB-1A, as you can see, there's a date. It doesn't say C. It says 1st June 2022. So what that means is USCIS is now processing or accepting green card applications for people who filed their EB-1As in June of 2022. So that means that from June until now, what is that, like about 8 months or so? There's a little bit of a wait until you can. So what we don't want to get too technical here, but there's 2 steps to applying for a green card. And the first step is the EB-1A, and the second step is the actual green card application. And that second step can be filed when it's your turn in line.
And so I think some of the important things to note here, and thank you for that overview, you know, if you were born in India and you're in an EB-3 category, it's only your turn in line if you started the green card process before August of 2012.
Right.
You know, if you want to be in the EB-1A line, you can start the process if you have a priority date before June of 2022. So also, it doesn't linearly progress. The government does not get through 1 year of backlog in this calendar year. It like jerks, it starts and stops, it moves forward, it retrogresses. So we're always tracking this for our clients. And, you know, somebody asked, what is an Irish, somebody has a dual citizenship in Ireland and South Africa. So like, what do they look at on here?
So they would look at all chargeability. So it really doesn't matter unless you're from the countries that are specifically picked out.
Okay. And then here's an example I like. So basically, if you're not from one of these countries, you go into the all other bucket, and you can see that you're current for EB-1A and you're looking at a 2 to 3 month backlog for EB-2 NIW. So there's very little wait.
That's correct.
The other example I like to give is if you are an Indian, somebody who's born in India and you are married to an Indian citizen who was born in Kenya and you're both in the United States on H-1Bs, guess what? You get to use your spouse's country of birth, Kenya, and you all get to be Kenyan people for this purpose. And so you get to go into the all column, and you guys don't have to wait in the India line anymore. Even though you're both citizens of India. So there's like weird things. So just if you're married to somebody from another country, that's helpful. Otherwise, it's based on your country of birth, not citizenship.
And fun quick story. I remember on the last week of December when we knew this retrogression was coming for India and China, and we got some EB-1A applications filed with adjustments that were recently approved. And you know, it was so
exciting.
You have to foresee that and sort of see what we can do.
Yeah. Okay, wonderful. And thanks for that great question. And thank you everybody for all the amazing questions that are coming in. And yes, these do represent countries of birth and not countries of citizenship. For the visa bulletin, for your priority date, for your spot in line, that is based on country of birth. Okay, cool. Okay, I'm just scanning the questions as we go through. Okay, we're going to take questions throughout, keep adding them. We're going to try to reserve questions time at the end as well. Okay, so we've helped hundreds and hundreds of people get green cards, EB-1As, EB-2 NIWs, O-1A visas. We are, you know, so delighted to help, and we do not accept every client. So I hope that gives, you know, I know a lot of our current clients are listening, and I hope that gives you some, you know, calmness and confidence that we actually turn away a lot of people who would like these because we don't want to waste their time and money if they're not qualified yet. We would love to help you in the future, and we do have resources to become qualified, like our Extraordinary Ability Bootcamp class. But you know, we only accept people who we believe have a chance, right, Nadia?
Oh yeah, Sophie and I, we definitely like go back and forth sometimes where she's like, can we do it? You know, if we focus on this, and I'm like, Sophie, we can't do it.
I'm ever hopeful. I'm always like, please, please, they want to stay. They're going to invent the cancer cure or the Iron Man suit or something. Please.
Yeah, we definitely balance each other out in that.
Yeah. All right, so let's really dive into it now. How to establish extraordinary ability. Okay, so just to remember, this is one type of green card. It's similar to O1s and EB2s, but it's a little different. This is the hardest thing to get that we're focusing on today. It has 10 categories. What do you need to qualify? How many categories, Nadia?
You need at least 3, but I want to mention this because a lot of people during consultation say it looks identical. So what's the difference? For the EB-1A, there's this final merits determination where you know, you might check all the like 3 boxes, but the officer can look at your portfolio of accomplishments in totality and say, you know what? Yes, I think this person is extraordinary in this field, or can look at it all and say, yeah, you checked 3 of the boxes, but I'm not fully convinced that you're in the top small percentage of your field. So that is a critical difference, I would say. And we see that time and time again in requests for evidence that are issued. Luckily, we don't have too many denials, but in the random denial here and there for people who push to file this, even if we were like, it's going to be hard, they will cite that. They will say on the final merits determination, we're just not convinced. So that's a critical.
Yeah, we also often tell people, look, we thought you had enough. You don't, go back and do XYZ. We're going to put this on hold until you do it. Sometimes our clients, you know, understanding the risks, decide, hey, it's really important to me just to try this right now because I need to know XYZ and make my whatever life decision, right? So okay. So 3 of these categories, a bunch of we mail thousands of pages of paper to USCIS every week. We destroy so many trees.
We filed a petition last week that I think was 1,400 pages long.
Yeah, so if you don't have that many pages of evidence either, it's okay, but just to try to impart, like, this is a voluminous undertaking.
Yes, definitely not saying you need 1,400 pages. It's all about quality over quantity. But, you know, I've done this for artists, and I do this for tech people. And the similarity is that you have to think of it as your portfolio of accomplishments and the presentation, and how the officer can look at it and say, and be impressed by all of the things. Yeah,
because essentially it boils down to one human who might be in a windowless office or working from their couch at home, you know, we don't know, but it goes to one person who might be new, who might be seasoned, probably they have a bachelor's degree, probably they've never heard of your field. So we have to cater to them. Okay, so you need 3, and then we get a bunch of letters of recommendation that we hope, you know, we can help write and edit and whatever, but ultimately we're working with you to figure out who in your network will be the best authors and signatories. We're helping draft it from their point of view. We're giving them the opportunity to edit it and to say anything that they want, and then they sign it when they're ready.
Exactly. And we like to cross-reference evidence. So if somebody's saying you were great and you did all of these things, we ideally like to then also present, I don't know, a research paper or an article published somewhere that's also talking about that same thing that you did that was extraordinary. So again, it's like a narrative, and we want to have lots of different types of evidence to prove what we're trying to prove.
Yeah, wonderful. Okay, so the first one is prizes and awards. You must demonstrate, if you want this to be one of your 3, you must demonstrate you have evidence of receipt of lesser nationally or internationally recognized prizes or awards for excellence. I will just preface this by saying we have tailored this webinar to people who do not have Nobel Prizes or Pulitzer Prizes. So that's why it's lesser. It's in comparison to that. What are some types of awards that you see pop up for people in tech, startups, venture?
Yeah, so we have been really successful at arguing accelerators as a type of award or prize because they're selective and because they often, the acceptance into the accelerator comes with some sort of funding, whether it's $150,000 or $200,000, and we've argued that that's a type of prize. And we definitely, whatever the accelerator is, we definitely need to show what their selection criteria is, so that the officer reviewing it sees that there was a barrier to entry, that you were picked because of your abilities. And then the things that don't work are things that happened when you were a student. And so if you won the best engineer in your senior class in university, unfortunately, that is not looked upon highly by the officer, because keep in mind, for EB-1A, they want you to be an established professional, already extraordinary in your field, not somebody who's still a work in progress, so to speak, and who's still building up there.
And the experience also has to be from your field. So some of our founder clients, are like overachievers in everything they do. So they're like, hey, here's my AI assistant app that I built. I was on the Hungarian national swim team as a 15-year-old and won the European champion. Can we use that? And their AI technology has nothing to do with swimming, and we cannot use the swimming competition. So keep that in mind as well. But like hackathons, pitch competitions, venture awards, just depending on the details, we may be able to use those.
Yeah, absolutely. Young entrepreneur in, you might become, I can think of a couple people from Germany, from Ireland, who won young entrepreneur awards that were like at some sort of government level. Those are really great as an example as well.
Nadia, how does the analysis work if somebody is working at a company and they invent a thing or work on a thing that wins a prize in the field? In what circumstances might we be able to connect the dots for them there?
So if you win the prize in the field and it's in the broader field, then we can try to argue that it's a prize or award in the field, even though you won it while you were at a company.
Yeah.
Or we argue that it shows your critical role, which is a different category for that company. So if you're working at, I don't know, who invented Nest? Google? You're working at Google and you worked on the Nest,
right. I think it was actually Johnny Ive, who was like Apple's lead designer, who went over to Google to create it. So he probably won a bunch of design awards.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
But they're probably in the name of Nest.
Right. So
held by
you get
Google.
a letter from somebody that says that you were critical to that project, you led it, or whatever, that you were somebody who was really involved with it, we do need some sort of evidence to draw that connection.
So if you're working in a tech company or in a corporate job, probably your company will be super happy if you can build stuff that's going to win big awards, and it can probably be helpful to your green card application as well.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay, let's go on to the next one, which is memberships. Evidence of your membership and associations in the field which demand outstanding achievement of their members. What does this mean?
It means that if anybody can pay to join, and it's a professional membership and anybody can pay to join, it's not helpful. Okay. If somebody reached out to you, if you're a, I don't know, software developer, and somebody reached out to you from a professional association for software people, I don't think anything like this exists, unfortunately, but if it did, and they reached out to you and said, you're so amazing, you're so good at what you do, we need people like you to be part of our professional association, that would count as a member.
Yeah, kind of like a fellowship in academia, or well, we've seen people join things like Forbes Council or Founders Network or some other like membership things for founders. We could argue potentially that being in Y Combinator or Techstars is also a form of membership.
Absolutely. You have to apply and then your application's accepted. That's definitely helpful and counts.
But it's not enough to simply be like, oh, I'm a single member of IEEE to get the magazine every year and get a discount on the conferences at like $100 or whatever they charge.
Exactly.
Wonderful. And it's not enough to get an invitation. You actually have to like follow through and be a member. And I will say, because some people are asking about EB-1A. So if you don't have a master's degree and you're not from India or China and you want to get a green card for yourself, and we're looking at the EB-1A option, that actually has a lower membership threshold. Like you could simply be a professional member of IEEE to qualify. You would not have to be on like a research committee setting standards or something.
That's correct. Yes.
So it's easier for memberships in EB-1A land.
Yes.
Okay, now let's talk about publicity. Evidence of published material about you in a professional or major trade publication or other major media.
Yeah, this is super duper common for the cases we do take on for founders and people who normally work behind the scenes. So, you know, someone who's a computer engineer is not an actor or a writer or somebody who's working in a capacity where they're always, you know, in front of the camera, so to speak. So publicity can be media coverage of your company, of your work, of your product, and it doesn't have to be the New York Times. It doesn't have to be Forbes. Again, it's quality over quantity. So if you are featured in Fast Company and Inc. and all those really well-known media outlets, then that is great. Again, the officer probably like is more familiar.
Insider or TechCrunch, like if they're seeing it in their news feed on their cell phone and they can recognize it, it's probably helpful.
Exactly. But if it's not in those and it's in other media, maybe it's in media that's widely read in your field, like for lawyers,
for your field or your home country, either way.
Exactly.
Right?
Yeah. And in our field, we know, Sophie and I know immigration media where coverage is considered really great.
Right.
So you might know in your field, there are certain platforms that everybody looks at and everybody reads, and that would be helpful.
And ideally, it's like a full-blown feature interview on your life's work and how great you are, but we can still manage to weave in things that are like stuff about your company or stuff about your product or stuff that quotes you. So if you anticipate that your company is going to do any sort of press release, media push in advance of like another raise of venture funding, talk to your team and see how you can get featured in some of that, because it'll have the, you know, the double effect of helping out your green card.
Totally, because we're trying to position you as an expert thought leader in your field, and if the publicity is also helping us prove that, then that's going to be helpful to your case.
Okay, thanks. Now, judging. Gosh, you're so judgmental. How do we use judging to help?
Hackathons. And if you're asked to be on a panel where you are evaluating other professionals, so if you're at a startup pitch competition and you are asked to judge, that would be.
I think we could argue maybe that venture scouts and that role could be valuable because you're evaluating startups for VCs to invest in.
Yes, absolutely.
I've seen people for like country-based accelerators for their home country that are like deciding who can participate.
Absolutely. And then we put it into context, explain it to the officer, what you're judging, what is the pool, why you're judging in that capacity.
And like membership committees in those associations could work too. I think though it's harder. I try to make this argument, but what's your take? Being responsible for doing people's one-on-ones in your company and evaluating like their OKRs and stuff, promotion committees internally in a company, that's harder to use, right?
Yes, I don't like that. I like to use that for critical role.
Okay, for critical role. Okay. Cool. Okay, original contributions. What is an original contribution and what is not an original contribution?
Yeah, so I actually like when I'm doing my one-on-one consultations, I love to start with this because it sort of puts the whole thing into context.
It's like it tells you what their field is and what they invented or created. Yeah.
Yes. And I say, think of what you've done that goes beyond your company and yourself. So is there something you've done that's being used by others in your field, that's being cited or implemented, whether it's an idea or a technique or a product or research? We just want to show that it's, again, we're trying to prove that you're at the top of your field. So whatever is your contribution, again, that goes beyond just benefiting maybe the company you work for or making money for yourself, like something.
And not everybody is going to have this, because you're not all like inventors of gadgets and gizmos. But maybe you could be creative. Like, I'm trying to figure out, like, I did not invent EB-1As. I did not create immigration law, but I did create a legal launch program, and I have a trademark on the Dear Sophie column in TechCrunch. And so what you do is look creatively about things that you might not even realize were contributions to the field.
Absolutely. And we recently did one for a product growth professional, which is very much not like something super concrete. You know, it's ideas and techniques. And so those cases are definitely much harder to prove, because it's not like you invented something, but it can still be done. It just needs to be explained. And
wonderful. Okay. Authorship. I'll just briefly share, one of my clients was like, oh, I'm not an academic. I don't have first author publications in scientific journals. It's fine. She ended up writing 5 or 6 articles in Chinese for a product management online magazine in China, and that worked. And then later I was like, how did that go? And she's like, oh yeah, after I got the green card, I got a book deal and I wrote a bestseller in China on product management. And now I have a revenue stream of being an author. So you never know how these things are going to go.
Absolutely agree. I mean, you know your field, you might have expertise. And again, you don't have to publish in a research journal. You could publish on other websites. Ideally not self-publish websites like Medium, but anywhere where you could submit articles and they love it. Like TechCrunch is great. Really great.
Yeah, and they're really interested in founder first person stories of like how I overcame XYZ obstacle. So if anybody has those types of articles to share with me, happy to pass those along. And as long as you're the author and it's your thoughts and you're, really reviewing it, my personal opinion is that it's probably fine if you need to hire like a ghostwriter to help you if English is your second language and you need help getting it drafted initially.
Yeah.
Because what matters is the publication.
Right.
Okay. And then additionally, money, high salary or high remuneration. What are some examples we could use for this prong?
Yeah, so we look at your tax records, we look at your base salary, and then we look at the Department of Labor salary survey for your field, because the immigration officers love data that comes out of a government agency. So we compare it to that. And then we also will do some research on pay scale and other sources to show that, look, your salary is higher than what's average. And that shows that you're extraordinary.
Okay, wonderful. We can also, for startups, equity.
Yes, so we have argued equity valuation of the company. Some founders are on their second or third startup and they have been acquired previously. And sometimes I have to pull teeth to say, don't be humble. Just if you were acquired and you a significant amount for that work that you did, that is great evidence in many different regards.
And that's an overall tip too. I think everybody and every culture in the world besides the United States is probably more likely to be humble than we are culturally trained to be here. So this is not the time to be humble. This is the time to like fake it till you make, you believe you are it and you're going to make it. Thought leadership, like be a thought leader, all of that stuff. This is the time for that.
And of course, this information is confidential. We don't share it with anyone. The government also doesn't, we make sure that it's kept confidential. So it's good to use that.
Great. And I think we're just going to skip over artists, but like we've gotten a extraordinary stuff for people in tech who are like UX UI designers. There's different types of design that can work. Also, if you're an artist, we can certainly help you as well. They have different categories they can use too. We talked about the letters. I think we're going to move forward because we have a lot of slides and a lot of questions.
Yeah.
Okay, so if you know that you are at the super duper beginning of this process and you are absolutely not qualified and you don't want to talk to us, but you just want to get to work on building up your portfolio of accomplishments, this whole thing that we've done, we also have as an online class that's 15 video modules that goes into every single prong in depth with lots of details from requests for evidence that we have received in the past from real anonymized human cases, so that you can really understand and start to think about, okay, I'm in the field of, I don't know, whatever, crypto for AI or something. And how am I going to build this in there? So there's a promo code, and Alex is going to add these details and this link, please, to the chat window so that everybody can take advantage of our class, Extraordinary Ability Bootcamp. And we're also going to be sending out a bunch of materials after the webinar to all the registrants, including this information. So, you know, here's just an example of like what we look at as legal professionals. Lots of very detailed information, field specific, and everybody in I think Nadia's team of 3 people at this point combined has over 50, 60 years of legal experience, probably. So real experts who love doing this, who have, you know, if they leave, they come back because they care so passionately about helping our clients. So lots of depth of expertise in our Extraordinary Ability Bootcamp class for you. If you're thinking about going into a case and you're trying to figure out what's involved, in general, you have to be prepared for your time and your money. Most of these things end up being, you know, our intro package for legal launch at the low end, it's like a couple $1,000s. But if you're going to do a whole green card for a family of 4, you know, it's going to be substantially more. If you're looking at a visa, O1 or green card for one person, it's probably going to be on the order of around $10,000 to $15,000 for legal, plus a few thousand of filing fees beyond that. So keep that in mind as a ballpark, but we will give you a particular individual quote. We offer like fast expedited speeds if you need this to be filed faster. Typically, it takes us about 2 to 3 months to get all the information and get it all together. Assuming you are already qualified and you have already achieved enough for us to be able to work with you. But Nadia, can you say a couple words about our legal launch program and who that's good for and what it helps you do?
Yes, absolutely. I just got news a really hard case was approved, so I'm just
congratulations.
Thank you. Thank you. So back to legal launch. So legal launch is for people who have evidence and documentation. So we just went through all this stuff and you're like, wait, I have that. And I think I have that. And I think I have this. Then legal launch is a program where you can actually give us all your documentation. We'll help you organize it. We'll review it. We'll do a deep dive into what you have and give you our honest assessment of whether or not you qualify for any of these O1, EB-1A, EB-2NIW, or you may think you qualify for one of these and we might say, no, actually, this is a better fit. And if we decide you do qualify, you can hire us. And if we decide you don't, then we will give you advice and guidance tailored to you on what you can do to qualify in the near future.
Yeah, so this is the most in-depth like intro package we have where you don't have to commit to the full thing, and we'll let you know with a high level of confidence whether you qualify to do it now or if you need to work on anything specifically what you should do based on your field and your job history and your opportunities. We can help focus that in for you.
Right.
And then sometimes, you know, we recommend based on that program that people get an O1 visa as a first step, and it can be for different reasons. It takes way less time. We can get it in about 6 months. It's easier. Sometimes people want a green card because they want to have multiple employers or be self-employed. Well, you can do that with an O1. If you need to have the ability to travel in and out of the United States frequently, and you can't be locked in while you're waiting on an I-485, maybe it's good to have this first. So just keep that in mind. There is a visa. It's good for 3 years. It's like the EB-1A, but it's easier to get. So that may be an option we work with you to consider. Oops. And then also, we've also mentioned the EB-2NIW. So for this, what we look at when we help people is your priority date, really. If you're not from India or China, we're probably going to put you in that direction because it's going to have a better outcome more likely, more frequently. It's easier, so more people can qualify. But if you're from China, or if you were born in China or India, we're going to look at your priority date. Do you have an old priority date from another company that we could potentially use to speed this up? Maybe you qualify. Or, where was your spouse born, so that we could look to their country as well. So these are all of the things that we will evaluate in legal launch when we look at your criteria. We would love to support you. Here is our contact information. You can also grab it from the chat window. Alex is sharing a lot of good information there. And in our remaining few minutes, let's see how many questions. I love all your questions. We're just gonna see how many of these we can get through. So criteria to qualify for O1A, like the EB-1A, we just covered it.
Right.
Happy to take a look. How much time can it take now if we start from scratch? So let's say people who have no accomplishments that qualify. I think it depends if you're going for an EB-2NIW or an O1 or an EB-1.
Yeah, absolutely. It depends. And we have to see also like what's available to you. Like some people are like, oh, I've applied for an accelerator. I'm going to find out by the end of the year. So we have to just see what is realistic.
Yeah. But I had one like crazy person go from not qualified to qualified in like 6 weeks because that was all they did. But they did an amazing job and had amazing success, and they were super focused. They were relentless. But I think typically for like somebody in school, maybe 6 months, 9 months, 12 months. But it's harder for an EB-1A. It's easier for an EB-2NIW.
Right.
Will the boot camp benefit you for EB-1A? The boot camp is less than $500. If you want more details than what we covered on this webinar, it's just like that, but more. So that's how to know if boot camp is right for you. Do podcasts count for publicity? I would say they can. It depends on how many people listen.
Exactly. So for anything you're wondering, does it count? Look at the circulation information. So look at who listens to it, how many people, because we have to present that evidence. We're going to ask you for it anyway.
Yeah, great. And Nadia, what is the investment for legal launch?
It's about $2,500.
Yeah, wonderful. Thank you so much. Okay. What if your evidence is in other languages?
That's fine, but you have to have certified translations, and we can connect you to the translation agency we use, or you could use your own as long as it's certified.
Great. If you got funded by an accelerator and you're a member of the accelerator like YC, can you use it for both award and membership?
Yes.
Great. Can you join a local association and have that count?
We have to look at the selection criteria.
Okay. I'll answer this one. Professional designations like CFA or CPA do not help for EB-1A or EB-2NIW, but if you do not have a master's degree, they can help for an EB-2NIW. Did I say that right? Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. Let's see. Somebody got an award from a community of over 40,000 people, and they got outstanding achievement of a producer's award, and they're like a young real estate investor. I think that this is certainly worth considering, and I would recommend they go to legal launch, right?
Exactly. Mm-hmm.
Great. Okay. Okay, this is our lightning round. If I work in a startup and my team is working on a project together and won an award, would it still count? I think we covered that. Answer is yes. Is the EB-1A good fit for a startup founder? Yes. What are the key criteria to meet? I think a lot of founders do awards, memberships, original contribution, leading in critical role, maybe publicity, maybe authorship.
Yeah.
Okay. How to show the significance of my patents for the EB-1A without the risk of foregoing protection for my startup against widespread use of the technology. I mean, as I understand it, Tesla doesn't even bother to patent their stuff. It's open source. They're just ahead of the curve because they're constantly building. That being said, the government is not supposed to like take your information and spread it around the internet. So we can show that patents are pending. But this is, you know, a trade-off we'll probably have to talk to you about based on how stealthy your company is. International entrepreneur parole. The government just put some website together about it last week, which is nice, but all of our clients who got the funding and qualified basically withdrew because over a year in, the government never made a decision and they had already built up their accomplishments for the O1A. So we're not currently recommending it. Okay. Somebody wants to know about premium processing. What is it? When is it useful? Does it affect your chances?
Yes, so it doesn't, in my opinion, it doesn't affect your chances, but different practitioners have different opinions on that. It's a fee you pay to the government, and they'll decide your case in either 15 days or 45 days for EB-2NAWs.
Yeah. And we're going to have to stop there. There's still 22 open questions. We got through 19. Please do contact us. We can try to connect with you if you put in a question with your name on it. But really, if you need an answer, do just send us an email to hello@alcorn.law. We so appreciate everybody's attending today. Nadia, thank you so much. I know you're so busy with so many people wanting to talk to you. So thank you for making time. And thank you so much, everybody. That concludes today's webinar.
Of course, it was great. Thank you, Sophie.
Okay, have a great day, everybody. Bye-bye.
Bye.